The Building Safety Levy is a new tax on building paid by the client. It's based on the good intention to raise £3.4 billion to cover the cost of remedial works to existing buildings, including elements that create life safety concerns such as cladding or fire stopping issues. The levy is being introduced in autumn 2026. This is a year later than originally proposed in order to provide the industry with more adjustment time. It has been triggered by the Building Safety Act, which, as we all know, was introduced as a result of the Grenfell tragedy. The levy will apply to anyone creating 10 or more dwellings or 30 bed spaces in purpose-built student accommodation. These may be new build or formed by change of use of an existing building. Exemptions will be in place for developments under 10 units or buildings that are considered to be in the public interest, such as affordable housing, shelters, or forces accommodation. It's key to remember that the levy, although specifically triggered by the building regulations process, will be linked to the planning permission for the site. This is to remove the potential for gaming the system by submitting multiple building regulations applications for 9 houses and get away without having to pay the levy. We know that the levy has been set up with good reason and important cause, but a key concern for a lot of you will be, how much will it cost? The levy will be calculated based on the size of the dwelling and where it is located. If you are building in Chelsea, the levy cost is going to be much greater per square metre than if you are building in Blackpool. So, a typical 3-bed semi sits at around 95 metres squared. If it was built in Blackpool, a rate of £15.57 per square metre would apply. This equates to circa £1,500 per dwelling, or £15,000 on a site containing 10 houses. Not too scary. The same house, which in reality would probably be an apartment built in Chelsea, would have a rate of £100.35 per metre squared applied, equating to roughly £9,500 per dwelling, or around £95,000 for a 10-flat block. Again, it's a relatively low figure considering the value of the development, but it is something to be allowed for when margins are tight. For previously developed brownfield sites, there is a 50% reduction in the levy. To be eligible for the reduction, at least 75% of the land within the development boundary, as specified in the planning permission, must meet the government's definition of previously developed land. I'll let you do the sums for the larger sites. When the levy is paid is where the building regulations do come into consideration. The levy can be paid at any point between receiving the levy liability notice and submitting the compliance declaration to the registered building control approver. Be aware that it's not applied individually. If you have a site with 500 dwellings under a single planning application, the whole levy is due at this stage. Using our Blackpool and Chelsea examples, this would equate to £750,000 or £4.75 million respectively. Not huge overall for a 500 unit site, but could have cash flow implications. The building regs will also be amended to ensure that an application for 1 or more dwelling units must include specific information for the calculation of the levy. Without this, you will not be able to submit an application or start work. You may be thinking, what happens if I don't pay? At completion of the works, you will need to submit a certification of payment received from the local authority to the building control provider for the works. If they have not received this, the building regulations final certificate cannot be issued. Should the building be occupied without a certificate, the situation would then become subject to enforcement action. As building control, we do sit close to the changes. However, the levy is not something that we have introduced or directly control. Our key message is twofold. One, it is not the role of the building control to administer the levy, but the building control process triggers the collection. Two, this is a tax, but it's hopefully a manageable one and definitely one that we feel has a good cause. It will benefit people that have had to live and continue to live in unsafe housing. The introduction of the levy is still a work in progress, so it's important you check the government website for the most up-to-date guidance. See the link below. This also contains plenty more information which we couldn't include in this overview. At SOCOTEC Building Control, we feel it is important to give the industry the heads up on important changes and new regulations coming down the line. If there are any topics you feel we should cover, then please do let us know. Please subscribe to our newsletter and YouTube channel and get in touch via the information on screen now if you have any questions. Thank you.